Uzamala. In today's fast-changing world, young people are navigating more uncertainty, pressure, and distraction than ever before. Academic expectations, social media influence, career anxieties, and questions about identity and purpose all shape the lives of our youth today. And yet, Bhutan is also a country deeply rooted in spiritual wisdom, where the teachings of Buddhism have guided generations in finding meaning, resilience, and compassion. So an important question arises: can ancient wisdom still guide modern youth? Today, we bring together 30 students from Noveling Richter College in Paro, each with their own curiosity, doubts, and reflections about Buddhism and life. Each student will ask questions directly to 𝐿𝐿𝐿, exploring themes such as happiness, karma, identity, mental health, compassion, and navigating modern life. This is not a lecture, this is a conversation between youth and wisdom. Joining us today is Lama Shinfen, whose work with youth, rehabilitation, and spiritual guidance has touched many lives across Bhutan. Lamala, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for inviting me.
Yes. And to all our wonderful students, thank you for bringing your curiosity and courage into this space. We're keeping this conversation slightly and the setting more casual and informal so that ideas can be shared freely. To begin, let's look at how Buddhism speaks to realities of modern youth. Many young people today are facing or trying to balance ambition, expectations, and inner peace. So let's hear our first question.
Kusangpula Lama. So I'm very happy to be part of this program, and thank you so much for having us. So my first question is, many young people today feel torn between chasing success and finding inner peace. So how does the concept of middle way or the path can help us find a healthy balance between our goals and well-being?
Oh, okay. I think first you have to define what is success. What does success mean? I mean, different people have different ideas of what success, but nowadays I think it's been mostly hijacked by Western concepts of capitalism, where success is having a good bank balance, having a good job, and the way to do that is through academic study, I think. But I don't know if that really is success. Are people happier? I mean, what is the aim of life in terms of, not talking about Buddhism as such. In Buddhism we talk about understanding reality, but if we're just talking on a worldly level, I think we all want to be happy, no? Basically we want to be content and happy. And is the modern way of success, is the modern way of definition of success bringing us that? I don't know. We would think of successful countries maybe like South Korea. They have the highest suicide rate in the world, you know that. Everybody's rushing to Australia. They're in the top 5 countries in the world for depression. So I don't know whether the modern definition of success is something that we really want. I think there was a poet, I forgot who, he defined success as because of you knowing that somebody else has breathed easier. When you get old, because you lived somebody else's life is better. He described that as success. So there are different ideas of success. But I think we need to define that first. What do you mean by success? And not only look at what the capitalist world has defined as success. Because it's kind of a brainwashing, actually. They want people to be consumers. They want people to just fit into this world, buying things, thinking that the car, the new job. And it's kind of, I don't know if that will really bring success, because according to Buddhism, everything is changing. Yeah. So you think, okay, I'll get a new car, I'll get a new job, I get a new house. That's success. But I don't know, these things according to Buddhism don't really exist in the way we see them. Yeah. We project an idea on them, but they're just a temporarily joining together of things which is always changing. So when we're looking for this idea of success in the material world, we're trying to grab something which is not really there. So it's like looking at, say, a mirage. You know a mirage? You know, you get in a desert. It comes from the joining together of heat and moisture. And we think maybe the success is to get there and get the water. But when we get there, it doesn't exist actually. It kind of exists, we see it, but when we get there, it doesn't provide us with what we need. And I think the modern day idea of success kind of fits into that. So I think first you need to define what is success, what makes us happy, basically. And beyond that, then you can look at maybe Buddhist ideas of what is reality. Yeah. So I think before you start running for success, I think you need to define what you mean by success, and don't just follow the trends. You know, everybody's saying you have to have a good job, you have to have a good bank balance, you have to, I don't know. But I don't know, is that success? When you're dying in a hospital, when you're old, does it matter how many cars you had? Does it matter how many trips to Bangkok you had made? Yeah, I don't know if that will be your idea of success when you're dying. Or is it that you did something great in your life, that you helped others, or that you understood a reality? I don't know. So I think first you need to define what is success. Yes? So I think everybody in this modern day should ask them, what are we running for? What are we looking at? You know, what is our aim? And it's the modern day idea of success. Really success? I don't know. You have to answer that yourself, but I think you should look at that first, and then you can put your direction. You know, it's like if your goal is to go to Jakar in Bumtang, or you want to go to Siliguri in India, you have to kind of see that that's your goal and go in that direction. But if your idea of success is not that clear, and maybe not even the right direction, then the right aim, then you have to adapt that, you know, where you want to go. So I think first of all, you need to really consider, everybody needs to consider what is success. You know? Yeah, does that make sense? From then on, then you can start to look at your path. But don't just follow others too like a sheep. We are humans, we have a mind, we have a brain. We have to respect the local conditions, what our parents want. But on the other side, we also have a different style of education. You know, we are more open, we have more influences, we can see more, we can see clearly. You know? So I think you need to define or look at what is your idea of success, you know? And don't just follow the trends that were set in New York or in Tokyo or anywhere. Find your own idea of what is success, what makes me a good human being, what makes me happy. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Lama. So I have another question, La. So if you could offer one simple and essential piece of guidance from Buddhism to young people like us, so what would it be? And how can we begin to practice it meaningfully in our daily life?
One piece of advice. Know that you have a mind, that you have something that we call mind, which is beyond just brain, you know, that is there, and that we can use that mind, you know. And I think the advice should be to look at what's around us. What are we looking for? What are we holding on to? You know, to investigate, really. Yeah. And I think from Buddhist point of view, because people often think Buddhism is very mystical. It's only for people who live in the caves in the mountains, or for religious types who go to the 𝐂𝐻𝐻. Actually, it's not. It's very practical. What the Buddha basically said was all things are compounded. Everything is made up of parts. Everything is impermanent. All emotions are pain. That's kind of basically it. And I think you could, if you can understand that, if you can contemplate that and then think of it in your daily life, your reaction to the world will change accordingly. Yeah? When you understand that this thing doesn't really exist as I see it, it's compounded, it's just made up of parts which I attach something to. Yeah? And then when you understand that it's not going to last, when the parts change, it will disappear. I think this kind of thought, if you can contemplate it in your daily life, will totally change how you react to the world. Because these days we shop for clothes and shoes and whatever, like we're going to live for 1,000 years. We live our lives like that they're going to go on forever, you know. So we take things for granted. We don't really live a full life, you know. We just half alive. But when you understand how things can change, see what's happening in Iran at the moment in the Middle East. It's nothing to do with us in Paro here, but it affects us. The price of petrol will go up. Medicines might be shortage, food will go up, so we can't really control what's around us, and I think we need to notice that. We need to be aware of that and see our life as something very precious and not to waste it. Yeah? So I think contemplate a little bit what the Buddha taught. All things are compounded. It's a little difficult to understand. Maybe I'll explain later, I'm sure. Somebody asked this question. That all things are impermanent, at least that one. Things are not going to last. Yeah, everything's going to change. If you can put this into your daily life, into your aspirations, into your practices, then I think you'll have a different feeling towards relationships, towards academic success. Everything will be a little different, yeah? More open, less stressful. Yeah? So I think contemplate these things, yeah.
Morning, Lama. Now, as we all know, Buddhism has been with Bhutan for a long, long time now. So, but nowadays, many young people are less engaged with Buddhism. So, why do you think that many young people are less engaged with Buddhism, and how might modern lifestyle, technology, and changing values influence their connection to its teachings? That's my question.
I think it's maybe because people like me have not explained it well. We have not really explained what the Dharma really says, because Buddhism says it's not boring, although it might seem that way. We see a lot of ritual, we see a lot of rules and regulations, but that really is not the Dharma. The Dharma is very alive, actually, very something that will change your lives very positively for the better thing. I think that needs to have to be explained to the youth, because what the Buddha taught, what Guru Rinpoche taught, what Shabdrung taught, cannot be changed, okay? This is something that is the truth, it represents the truth. We cannot change that. But how we explain it, how we bring it to our people, that should be changed. That can adapt to the times. I think we need we keep the traditional, because people want it, but we should also have a modern way of looking at it too. Because the Buddha taught 84,000 methods, 84,000, and I think we should not only stick to one way only. That limits it. It's like going to a closed shop with only one color and one size, We need to expand the variety, but clothes should not lose their essential meaning of something that keeps us warm. Yeah? But how the styles, we can definitely change it to attract people to buy it. So I think that's one thing we need to do, is somehow bring the essence of the Dharma, so it doesn't look like something that's not related to our lives. Yeah, I think that's another thing. People think, Dharma is something we do when we want to get a visa for Australia. When we want to, when somebody dies, we go to the cremation ground, we do prayers. When something goes wrong, we pray. It's not seen as something that we use in our daily life. And I think that could be introduced in a more modern way. And also the education system. I think most Asian countries were kind of, what word shall I use, brainwashed by the colonial era, by the British mostly. They brought their education to India, and the British did it on purpose. They wanted to actually make Indians and Asians think that everything British was superior. Yeah? And they did a good job, and it's still there, I can see it. If we, for example, in Buddhist countries in Asia, if we say, let's introduce Buddhist understanding, all things are impermanent, all things are compounded into the education system, they will not accept it in most cases. They don't have the confidence. But if you bring a Western science, they'll put it immediately. That instinct that anything from the West is better, it's still somehow in the consciousness of Asian societies. So although they might be proud of their culture and traditions, they don't have the confidence, I feel, to introduce it into their education system in a modern way. Because I'm not talking about ritual, I'm talking here about what the Buddha taught. And what the Buddha taught is very simple. As I said, all things are compounded, all emotions are pain, everything is impermanent. And these things are very, very important, but we'll accept blindly basically what Western science says. And to be honest, science is useful. Of course, it's very useful. It's brought a lot of conveniences to the world, but it changes. So what is, say, the most highly rated scientific discovery 100 years ago is a joke now. And what we have now, we think, wow, this is amazing. 20 years, it probably will be obsolete the way the world is going. So what most kids are learning in school about science, it probably will be out of date the time they graduate. Yeah. So science is evolving. It doesn't ever reach a point. Whereas what the Buddha taught is timeless wisdom. Yeah. And I think that has to be brought out in a way which young people can appreciate, you know? Not only in a very religious setting. It's not religious. Is Buddhism religion? It has a transcendental element. You get enlightened. So it's not a philosophy. Philosophy tends to just analyze, but without any kind of enlightenment experience. But on the other side, we don't have a God. We don't have a creator God. It's more like a training for your life, for mind, how to live, and then how to realize the truth. Yeah. And I think this can be brought out in many, many, many ways. It's not only in a very traditional way. So some people think that when you bring it in a modern way, you're going against tradition, but that is not the case. Tradition can stay. People who like it, fine. But we can also bring it in a modern way. Somebody once asked me a question, which I put in 𝐿. I think they had a letter from a friend in Taiwan. And Taiwan had a Buddhist festival. And they were playing trance music with the Buddha's life. You know trance? I guess you know trance music. Then they had heavy metal for chanting the mantras. So this lady said, the Taiwanese lady invited her. She said she couldn't go to Taiwan, but she was it was outside her bubble. She couldn't imagine it. So she asked my opinion. So as far as I can see, if it attracts young people to chant the mantras and to think more about Buddhism, then it's fine. Why not? My only doubt about it would be that it would be too new age. Like people might think, oh, just chanting like this, or having crystals, or what do you call these bowls and stuff, you know. And they might stop at that level. But I'm sure out of the thousands that attended that in Taiwan, I'm sure a percentage will be more interested because of that. So basically anything that nudges us or brings us towards understanding of the truth, I would say is a Dharma path. Yeah, anything. And if you're sitting chanting and it's not making you think that all things are compounded, all emotions are pain, it's Buddhism in a form, but I don't know if it's real Dharma. So I would say we have to be a little bit creative, maybe. Not to go against tradition. That's great. It's worked for many centuries and people like it. So there are other ways. So I think we have to recognize that. Yeah? So I think a lot of youth don't realize that Buddhism, how it can affect our lives in a fantastic way, actually wake you up to reality, how you can see things differently. So I think like that. What was the second part? Sorry. Oh, did you have two?
How might modern lifestyle, technology, and changing values influence the connection to its teachings of Buddhism?
How it influences Buddhism, you mean?
Yes.
Buddhism, the teachings of the Buddha cannot be changed, and the reason is because they are timeless. There's nothing, all things are compounded, it's a fact. Nothing exists independently, right? Everything is, all emotions are pain. That's a little difficult to understand, but when you understand how I'm separate from you, you are from me, there's a kind of an emotional tension. And then that everything will fall apart. These are timeless. There's nothing that anyone can change that. So I think rather than technology changing Buddhism, Buddhism should change how technology works. When we understand that, the way we relate to technology will be so different. Yeah? When we understand how people are built, how they live, how they... for example, we have wars. At the moment we go to war in the Middle East. Yeah? This is beyond technology, but why do we have this kind of war? Let's think that, for example, as an individual, from a Buddhist point of view, I'm going to go a little deeper here, okay? Hope you don't mind. So if you look for something, let's start with something simple. Let's look at a desk, okay? So you look at a desk and you see a desk, right? We all see a desk, right? But is it ultimately a desk? See, if I took it to the Amazon jungle, they might think it's a raft. If you bring a cat maybe sit on the top. Yeah? A child might think it's a place to hide. It's not ultimately a desk, yeah? It's just our projection of 4 legs and a top, yeah? And if I take one leg off, where is the desk? You say, yeah, it's still there, but a little bit broken. I take off the top, where's the desk? Not really a desk, but I can see the form. Take off another leg, desk is gone. You think it's gone, but where was the desk? Was it in the top? Was it in the leg? Where was this thing called a desk? It doesn't really exist beyond we as our culture saw these things temporarily joined, okay? So you are the same, I am the same. Where am I? You call me Lama, okay? So if I take out my left leg, right leg, slowly I imagine them taking off, take out my heart. You say, where are you? Yeah, you're still in the main part. Take off another part, take out the ribs. Somebody say, oh, you're not there anymore. But where was I? Was I in the heart? Was I in the liver? Was I in the kidneys? Where was this thing called me? It doesn't really exist. It's just a temporarily joining together of parts, okay? So what I'm getting to is when we see somebody, we say, I hate this guy, he's bad. Yeah? Then we see you as a solid, permanent thing called bad. But if we look at it from a Buddhist point of view, it's not possible. You are just a result of your childhood, your culture, yeah, plus your physical, okay? And it's changing. In a different environment, you'll be different, yeah? So how does that affect wars? When we see a country, maybe, I'm just using this as an example, I don't know how they think, but maybe Iranians hate the US, or they hate Israel, and Israelis hate Iranians. But even if one single person is not totally bad, they're only a joining together of parts. How can a whole country or a whole society or a whole nation be permanently bad? It's not possible. Yeah? But to get that anger, if I wanted to punch you, I'd have to think in my head, this guy is so bad, he's really terrible. To bring out that anger that I would whack you, no? But if somebody says, no, remember that time he was kind to you? It'll start making a small dent. No? So I don't want to hear that. I just want to see you as bad. So I'm sure that Israelis, Iranians want to see each other as totally bad. And because of that, they can send bombs, they can kill them. But from a Buddhist point of view, it doesn't work. How can, if even one person doesn't have a solid personality or a solid permanent disposition, how can a whole race of people? It doesn't make sense, yeah? So when we understand that even intellectually, we can start to look at things from another side, yeah? The Israelis can look at the Iranians from their angle, their point of view, yeah? We can start to see things from a 360-degree point, yeah? But what normally happens, we put on sunglasses, you're black. I can only see one color, yeah? But when you wake up to that, because Buddhism is not just an intellectual understanding, it's also a realization. So the great masters, when they realize that, it's like a dream and an illusion. Nothing really exists as we see it. Yeah? And when you see that, how can you be angry with somebody? How can you really have, permanently think that that person is bad? You know, that you want to hit them or kill them or do something. It's not possible. Yeah? So I think when we look at technology and all these things in the same light, it changes our connection with them. It totally changes our connection. So we can use things. The Buddha is not against modern technology. Don't think Buddhism is a backward thing. We all have to live in caves. Buddhism is not about that. It's about putting wisdom into how we see things. You can still have vacuum cleaners. You can still fly in airplanes. You still go and see a doctor, but we see it in a different way. Yeah? And we see other people's opinions about things in a different way. So you asked the question earlier, what can we do as people to, as young people? I think try to see things from other people's shoes, from other people's eyes. I think that's a good start. Yeah? People will do something, but because of their upbringing, most people are pretty much a product of how they grew up. Yeah? you see their childhood. Like, for example, a lot of people will say, oh, addicts are bad. I'm sorry, I don't think I can agree with that. All the addicts I worked with, I think we sent more than 800 to Siliguri for rehabilitation. And when I used to write the biodata, mostly they had very tough childhoods. Almost always. They had no family connection, alcoholic parent, stepfather or stepmother who was not there or disagree. So they become a product of that, you know. So instead of saying this person is bad, why are they taking drugs? Actually, it's a coping mechanism. We have to ask why. So sometimes a parent will shout to a kid, why are you doing this? But actually that question is not bad if said properly. Why are you doing this? Why are you taking drugs? There's a reason. It's usually a coping mechanism. So I think for youth, but anyone actually, as you said, one thing is to try to see it from another point of view. Nobody wants to be an addict, actually. So why are they taking drugs? Is it fun? They know there's a risk. Yes, I think the good thing is always try to look from the other person's point of view. If somebody is arrogant, why are they arrogant? My boss is very arrogant. Probably he's insecure. It's a way of rising themselves up to saying, oh, keep away from me, because they have a lot of insecurity. So it doesn't mean you become a victim of their arrogance, or you just let the person take drugs without helping them, not locking them up, but helping them. But you do begin to understand why people do things, yeah? Why that person is arrogant, why that person is rude, you know? Maybe they're having a bad day. We try to look. So I think one of the better things is to try to see things from other people's point of view, which I think is a very Buddhist way of looking at life, you know? Because we try to see things from a bird's eye view, if you like. We try to see things all around rather than saying, my idea, this thing called me, is solid and my idea is right. It's just my idea. It's just my opinion. Yeah? And I think we should always remember that. Yeah? My opinion is this. I think I'm right, but it's just my opinion. You have your opinion for whatever reason. Yeah? I think we should always try to see things from that point of view, which is a very Buddhist way of understanding how things are connected. Yeah? Not permanently solid, right and wrong. Does that make sense? So I think we can look at technology or anything from that point of view. So rather than how technology contained Buddhism, I think Buddhism should change technology. I think if the West was more open, because the Westerners like to present themselves as being open, they're not. They have a very rigid idea of what is right and wrong. Yeah, and I think Asians have been a little bit plain brainwashed by the West, that they still kind of, and I think now it's time for things to change a little, have confidence in our own traditions, which are fantastic, I mean, very rich.
붐다 디시기 텔레 땅기 유신디나 유디 토타 금발레 고축디 유기주 멤버 초기 바나 진납진기 니다 하가다 균디 레샤주 유비구 하버도야 땅 추딜로 남칼 하강 시미 진납진기 하가지 착디 유비 하가디